Welcome to Best Disc Golf Discs video guide series. My name's Bart Bird, and in this episode I'll be covering 3 important reasons for you to watch pro disc golf. I love watching professional disc golf, but when I'm watching it, I'm always focused on what can we learn. And in this video, we'll be covering 3 specific things you can learn by watching that will help you improve your game. The first one of these things is managing wind. And managing wind takes on several forms. As you listen to the commentary, take note of whether or not the players are dealing with a headwind or a tailwind. In a tailwind situation, we know that the disc is going to provide less turnover and it's going to have less lift and glide. So it's going to be a more overstable, lower flight than what you would normally get from that disc. Conversely, the pros know that when they're dealing with a headwind, they're going to get more turnover and they're going to get more lift or glide. So the disc is going to get a more understable flight pattern that's going to be higher than it would normally be. Looking at the turnover scale rated from 1 to -5, if you have a disc that's in the middle of the scale, say a -2, if you're throwing into a headwind, that disc may perform more like a disc that's a -4, a much more understable disc. In this scenario, you'll often see the pros compensate by either increasing the turn of the disc that they're using or adding some Hyzer release angle to the throw. Another component of wind management is understanding crosswinds and balancing out your shot selection based on not just which direction the wind is blowing, but where. As you can see here, the tee pad is largely protected from the wind. So if you have a strong cross breeze blowing from left to right as you face the basket, from where you're standing, you may not even know. The pros are always thinking about not just how is the wind blowing from where they're standing, but how is the wind blowing further down the hole. Secondly, rather than taking a right-hand backhand shot, which is going to get pushed away from the basket at the end, the pros will often alter their shot selection, in this case going for a right-hand forehand, which will use the power of the wind to facilitate the throw, pushing it closer to the basket. The second key thing we can learn from watching pro coverage is using Hyzer. Hyzer is one of the most commonly used words you'll hear when watching pro coverage, and that's because the pros use Hyzer a lot. Where many of us will know to use Hyzer for shot shaping when we need a Hyzer angle to help bring the disc closer to the basket, the pros use the Hyzer in many more situations than that. Let's say we have a completely open fairway with a basket 375 feet away. Rather than throwing a turnover shot straight down the field, if the basket is in range of their Hyzer distance, the pros will typically choose to throw with a Hyzer angle at the basket. The question is, why do they do this? The answer to this ties back to our discussion on winds, because while a turnover shot without question has the potential to fly with the most distance, turnover shots are also the most susceptible to variation in pattern based on headwinds and tailwinds, as well as slight variations in release velocity, where a Hyzer shot is going to provide you with a very consistent overstable pattern, keeping you in a much tighter pattern around where you intended the disc to fly, even under variable conditions. The third key thing to learn when watching pro coverage is managing MAC, and we're referring to MAC as the movement after contact with the ground. When listening to the commentary in pro coverage, you'll hear a lot of different terminology describing the movement of the disc, and that's because the movement of the disc after contact is so critical to the final positioning and your upshot or your putt. One area in particular you'll notice the pros putting an emphasis on with their shot selection is managing the skip. When a disc is traveling directly towards the ground and hits at a 90-degree angle, it will of course have very little skip and sometimes even spike into the ground. But as the angle to the ground lessens, the disc will have more and more potential for a skip further away from its contact point. To manage this, if the pros want to minimize their skip after contact, they'll often choose their approach angle that will allow them to land in a bank, essentially in this case turning a 30-degree angle into something close to a 60-degree angle, increasing the contact angle to reduce skip. Conversely, if they want to get more distance from the skip, they'll choose to go down the slope, decreasing the angle and giving it more distance after contact with the ground. One final thing we can learn from watching pro coverage is how to drive over 500 feet consistently, but that's another video. So we hope this helped. You can click on the buttons to the left to subscribe to our YouTube channel or visit our website for additional information or watch these related videos that go more in depth on the science of some of the topics we've discussed here. Until then, thanks for watching and have a great round.